Big Edie, a riches to rags tale. Picture this. A woman lies on her deathbed, her daughter leaning close, asking if she has any final words. Her response? Unforgettable. This is the story of Big Edie, a woman who went from high society royalty to living in squalor, and somehow found her spotlight in the strangest way imaginable. Edith Big Edie Bouvier Beale was born into American aristocracy. As the reclusive socialite and aunt of First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, she should have spent her days gliding through ballrooms and summer estates. Instead, while her niece walked the halls of the White House, Big Edie tiptoed through Grey Gardens, her crumbling, cat-infested mansion in the Hamptons. Born to the wealthy and prestigious Bouvier family, Edie's destiny seemed written in gold. Her father, Major John Vernew Bouvier Jr., was a successful New York attorney and judge, firmly planted in the city's high society. The Bouviers had it all: wealth, status, power. And as the family grew, so did their extravagant connections. One of Big Edie's brothers, John Vernew Bouvier III, would father none other than the future First Lady herself. But Big Edie? She was far from presidential. Unlike her well-mannered siblings, Big Edie had a wild streak from day one. Stubborn, difficult to control, notorious. Bouvier historian John Davis once attributed her antics to her French genes, hinting at a natural inclination toward defiance. She was more accustomed to giving orders than taking them. Big Edie never shied away from grandiose claims about her heritage. During a casual chat with a neighbor, she reportedly declared, "Oh yes, we're all descended from 14th century French kings." Whether fact or fantasy, she carried herself like nobility and expected to be treated that way. By age 10, Edie had already gained a reputation as a gifted singer and pianist. Though her family expected her to marry well and conform to high society norms, her true passion was music. She embraced the glitz and glamour of Manhattan's elite circle, attractive, fashionable, charming. She became the sought-after guest at every society event, but while she basked in the limelight, someone glowered from the sidelines. Big Edie's father, John Vernew Bouvier, had high expectations for his daughter, and they didn't include late-night parties and voice lessons. He saw her passion for music and mischief as distractions from her real purpose, securing a respectable marriage. In Big Edie's defense, good men were hard to find. It seemed she might fulfill her father's hopes when she became engaged to Horace Riglow Allen, a promising society man. Their impending marriage had all of New York abuzz. But Big Edie's fairy tale ending never came. In 1916, she and Horace called off their engagement. After it fell apart, Allen fled to the battlefields of World War I. Fortunately, Edie's next engagement wouldn't be quite so scandalous, at least not at first. After her failed engagement, Big Edie didn't stray far from her father's expectations, at least on paper. In 1917, she married Phelan Beale, a successful attorney 14 years her senior, who would become her father's law partner. But despite the picture-perfect match, their marriage would unravel in spectacular fashion. As one of New York's most eligible bachelorettes, Big Edie's wedding became a major affair. Her nuptials to Phelan Beale at St. Patrick's Cathedral featured an exclusive guest list and became one of the social highlights of the season. Everyone seemed thrilled about the wedding. Everyone except the bride. For most brides, the dress is the highlight. Not for Big Edie. Her main concern? The music. She insisted on an extravagant choir and a soprano soloist, ensuring her passion for music took center stage. She got exactly what she wanted, and then regretted it. Looking back, Big Edie confessed that as she stood at the altar, she wished she'd been the one performing the soprano solo. Her love for music and performing left little room for anything or anyone else. After their marriage, Big Edie and Phelan had 3 children together, 2 sons and a daughter named Edith, or Little Edie, to distinguish her from her mother. While her sons would lead conventional lives, Big Edie's daughter would become her closest companion and eventually her partner in a life of eccentricities. Meanwhile, Big Edie refused to become a conventional society wife. Instead, she gained a reputation for being extravagant and passionately devoted to her own interests. Her love of music and performance often took precedence over her marriage. It wasn't long before cracks began to show. In 1923, Big Edie and Phelan bought Grey Gardens, a grand estate in wealthy East Hampton. Nestled near the ocean, the property was picturesque. But it wasn't just a summer retreat for Big Edie, it became the stage for her most dramatic performances, both on and off stage. Unlike the stiff parlors of her socialite peers, Big Edie's Grey Gardens was a haven for artists and musicians. The enigmatic socialite surrounded herself with creatives and spent her days singing, playing piano, and indulging in endless conversations about music and art. It was a world of her own making, one that didn't include her husband. Big Edie didn't just play music. She lived for it. She structured her days around practicing her operatic mezzo-soprano voice and entertaining guests. While other society wives played the modest hostess, Big Edie always took center stage. Sadly, the spotlight didn't always love her back. Big Edie was never satisfied performing for friends and family in her salon. What she really wanted was a professional singing career. To fulfill her fantasies, she hired an accompanist and performed at private parties and intimate venues, convinced she was destined for the stage. When she wasn't captivating audiences with her mezzo-soprano, Big Edie was turning heads with her fashion. While other East Hampton elites draped themselves in pearls and prim suits, she wore whatever she pleased: caftans, turbans, layers of mismatched fabrics. She took pride in standing out. For New York's high society, inclusion in the social register was a badge of honor. True to form, however, Big Edie chose to defy convention. She reportedly refused to have her name listed in the vaunted register, causing a scandal among her Hamptons neighbors. It was more than her poor husband could bear. Big Edie's free-spirited ways weren't just an affront to high society, they humiliated her husband. Phelan Beale thought he'd married a respectable Bouvier, only to watch Big Edie fall further into eccentricity. Her flamboyant bohemian lifestyle caused him great embarrassment. His next move left Big Edie uncharacteristically speechless. By 1931, Big Edie's theatrical lifestyle had become too much for her husband to bear. In a shockingly public rebuke of his wife's behavior, Beale separated from Big Edie and retreated to his hunting lodge. Big Edie remained at Grey Gardens alone, where her eccentric behavior only worsened. Following their separation, Beale provided Big Edie with child support but little else. He refused to pay alimony, leaving her, for the first time in her life, in an increasingly precarious financial situation. But Edie was hardly about to let money stop her from living her life. She refused to change her ways, unaware that her lavish lifestyle was about to come crashing down. By 1946, Beale had given up on Big Edie and her increasingly odd behavior. He expressed his exasperation in a blunt telegram, securing their divorce in Mexico. Big Edie barely acknowledged it, perhaps because she didn't believe it was real. Despite the paperwork from Mexico, doubts lingered about whether Big Edie's divorce was legally binding. Since the Catholic Church didn't recognize the split, her daughter, Little Edie, dismissed it as a fake Mexican divorce. But Little Edie was about to prove just how much she supported her mother in a big way. In July 1952, Big Edie's world shifted again when Little Edie returned home after years in Manhattan. What was meant to be a temporary visit quickly became permanent. The two eccentric women would soon find themselves bound together in a life of increasing isolation and wild hope. With her husband gone and financial support dwindling, Big Edie struggled to maintain Grey Gardens, especially with another mouth to feed. The once grand estate became a burden she refused to relinquish, even as it crumbled around her. She held on, determined to make it work, especially since she wasn't the one footing the bill. Even with Little Edie's help, Big Edie couldn't keep Grey Gardens afloat and was forced to turn to her reluctant father for assistance. Despite her age, her father agreed to give her an annual allowance of $3,500 to keep her head above water. But even he couldn't tolerate her odd behavior for long. Big Edie always sought the spotlight, even when it wasn't hers to claim. Her son's 1942 wedding was no exception. Instead of arriving with grace expected of the groom's mother, she showed up nearly half an hour late, dressed as if making a grand entrance. The stunt left guests whispering and her father fuming. Her antics at her son's wedding were the last straw. Just 2 days after the ceremony, he rewrote his will, slashing her inheritance from a generous $825,000 to a mere $65,000. And he wasn't done yet. Instead of granting her direct access to the remainder of her inheritance, he placed her on a strict monthly allowance of $300, ensuring she couldn't squander it on music parties or more eccentric fashion. With money running out, Big Edie resorted to desperate measures. She began pawning off the family's treasures, often nudging visitors to go shopping, as she and Little Edie put it. She sold Tiffany silver, antique jewelry, and Bouvier heirlooms, sometimes straight from under her mattress. Sadly, even these desperate efforts weren't enough. By the 1970s, Big Edie had all but given up any pretense of normalcy. Grey Gardens, once a spectacular Hamptons home, had become an infamous wreck. In October 1971, local authorities raided the estate. What they found was a crumbling house filled with litter, reeking of cats, and in violation of numerous local ordinances. But Big Edie had no intention of leaving her decaying paradise. At this point, she wasn't just an eccentric socialite living life on her own terms. She was teetering on the brink of homelessness. The Suffolk County Board of Health declared Grey Gardens uninhabitable and prepared to evict Big Edie and her daughter. It seemed only a matter of time before she'd be out on the street, until an unexpected savior stepped in. Jackie Kennedy Onassis, the former First Lady and Big Edie's niece, intervened alongside her sister, Lee Radziwill, to avoid further scandal. The two socialites reportedly paid thousands to clean up Grey Gardens, allowing Big Edie to stay put. For better or worse, saving Grey Gardens wasn't as simple as dusting off a few antiques. Big Edie's family reportedly shelled out $30,000 to restore the home, clear back taxes, and stop the town from auctioning it off. After the intervention from her famous relatives, Big Edie managed to keep a roof over her head. But her financial troubles deepened. With no income of her own, she and little Edie relied on a family stipend. By then, however, even the Bouvier Trust Fund had run dry. Fortunately, an unexpected source of income was just around the corner. As word of Big Edie's strange and secluded life spread, filmmakers Albert and David Maysles couldn't help but be intrigued. They first met Big Edie and Little Edie in 1971 when Lee Radziwill hired them to produce a film about the Bouvier family. That initial footage never saw the light of day, but their encounter with the infamous Edies planted a seed in the brothers' minds for a very different kind of film. In 1973, the brothers secured permission to create a cinema verite documentary about the mother-daughter duo. What followed was a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the eccentric world of Grey Gardens, one that sparked immediate controversy. When the Maysles rolled their cameras, Big Edie didn't hold back. Her moment in the spotlight had arrived. The resulting documentary captured both women, often speaking over one another in a swirl of chaotic, rambling conversation. Big Edie never lost her love for music and her sense of artistic whimsy and wonder. She reminisced about her perfect marriage, beautiful children, and her once promising musical career. And just to prove she still had it, she treated the filmmakers to a full-throated rendition of Tea for Two. But Big Edie wasn't the only one eager to share. Little Edie had plenty of grievances to air. She openly blamed her mother for keeping her trapped at Grey Gardens, robbing her of the life she dreamed of in Manhattan. She recalled how 2 decades earlier, she'd been forced to leave the Barbizon Hotel and return home, effectively ending her independence and tethering her to her eccentric mother. Little Edie even exposed some of Big Edie's most outrageous secrets. As the state of the mansion made clear, Big Edie had no interest in housekeeping, least of all in managing the countless cats that roamed the property. As Little Edie complained, "My mother doesn't believe in kitty litter. She prefers boxes and paper." And that was hardly the strangest behavior the cameras captured. Big Edie and Little Edie dined on ice cream with knives and used utensils in ways that defied logic, one of their more curious habits being balancing peas on the edge of a knife before eating them. Despite receiving some proceeds from the film, Big Edie's financial troubles only deepened. Things were far worse than most people realized. In secret, she applied for food stamps with the help of her friend Lois Wright, carefully concealing just how dire her situation had become. And yet she seemed content. When Grey Gardens debuted in theaters, critics couldn't agree. Was the film an intimate portrait or an act of exploitation? Big Edie, however, had no such doubts. "They are very nice people," she said of the filmmakers. To her, the documentary wasn't an invasion. It was her long overdue moment in the spotlight, and she absolutely adored being in it. Rather than feeling humiliated by the film's depiction of her crumbling mansion and unconventional lifestyle, Big Edie embraced it wholeheartedly. "It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my old age." But her final high came just before a hard fall. In 1976, just as her star was finally rising, Big Edie suffered a devastating accident. A terrible fall left her dependent on a wheelchair. Already in frail health, she grew weaker with each passing month. Through it all, Little Edie remained by her side, caring for her mother amid the decay of Grey Gardens. On February 5, 1977, Big Edie sang her final song. She passed away from pneumonia at Southampton Hospital. Reportedly, when Little Edie asked if she had any last words, her mother gave a simple, poignant reply: "There's nothing more to say. It's all in the film."